So I'm back. Another Celtics podcast. I can't stay away. There are things that need to be discussed. I needed a day to marinate because that Houston loss in overtime yesterday was fucking heart-wrenching, and I really just felt sick afterwards. I needed a day to process the shame. But I do want to talk about a couple of things. So I'm going to mention the Rockets game briefly. We're going to talk about dog shit Hubie Brown. And the main focus of this podcast is going to be about the ascension of our Lord and Savior, Jayson Tatum. So first, that Rockets game, fuck. Oh my God. So it's weird. Everyone said that the Celtics are too small and that we can't handle big teams. And yet it's the smallest fucking team in the NBA that's been dealing it to us. Between this and the Lakers game, it feels like we're almost there, but we're not quite ready yet. And that can happen when your best player is 21 years old. You know, we're hanging with the best teams in the league. We've had those three big games against Houston, against the Clippers, and against the Lakers, and we lost 2 out of 3 of them. I mean, we were in all 3 of those games, but it just feels like maybe next year. I hate to say that, but maybe next year. We're still in a dogfight for the second seed, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I think that second seed is absolutely crucial. I can't imagine being the 3 seed and then in the second round having to play Toronto in Toronto and finding a way to win that series. I'm not saying it's impossible, just highly unlikely that we'd be able to go up to Toronto and win that series. Whereas if we were the second seed and we had Toronto in Boston, I would feel much more comfortable winning that series and then eventually losing to the Bucks in the Eastern Conference Final, which, to be fair, I will be fine with that. The Bucks have been incredible this year. Not just the best team in the NBA, but just so remarkably consistent. No injuries, it doesn't seem like, which is amazing and something that we certainly can't say for ourselves. But before we lick Tatum's weird beard balls, here's a hot take. Being a top professional broadcaster is the hardest job in the world. It's more demanding than brain surgeons, astronauts, Instagram influencers, you name it. I mean, how else can you explain why there's only a few hundred working in professional sports and that 146-year-old fucking men like Hubie Brown and Marv Albert still have jobs? I mean, look, Marv used to be fantastic, but he more or less has dementia now. He calls Jaylen Brown Jalen Green. He calls Jeff Green Jeff Brown. He calls Jay Crowder Serena Williams. I mean, he's all mixed up. And don't even get me started on fucking Hubie Brown. I hate this guy. He calls every game like the audience is a 7-year-old that's never played basketball before. Now look here, he's got the ball and he's got 2 hands. He's going to dribble the ball with his 2 hands, but not both at once, and then he's either going to shoot it or pass it. Simple. Yeah, Hubie, it's simple, so just shut the fuck up about it. In the Rockets game yesterday, he literally said, oh, look here. This is a 2-3 zone. See, look, there's 2 guys there, and there's 3 guys there, and they're going to flatten out, and it's a 2-3 zone. Is it a 2-3 zone, Hubie? Jesus Christ, are you sure? Does it have 2 guys down there, and then 3 guys up there? Okay, great. Thank you so much for pointing that out. And then at one point, he just started making up numbers like a blind guy calling bingo. He said Jaylen Brown last year. This is what he said. Look, here's a guy. Last year, he averaged 12 points a game. This year, 20. Last year, he shot 42% from the field. This year, almost 50. Last year, 28% from 3. This year, 38%. Okay? Not okay. Where are you getting these numbers from? Like, has nobody told this guy he's just making shit up? Last year, Jaylen averaged 13 points per game, not 12, on 46% shooting and 34% from 3. In fact, he's never shot less than 34% from 3 and 45% from the field. So what the fuck are you even talking about? Is this job really so hard that 146-year-old men still hold the best positions? There really isn't, say, a 60-year-old out there that's qualified by now? So, yeah, the loss sucked, but the future is bright. Tatum is developing into a superstar. He is making the leap that so many superstars make in year 3. His numbers since the All-Star break are incredible. I think he's averaging something like 26 points, 7 rebounds per game, about 3 assists. His free throws are up. His field goal percentage and three-point percentage are both hovering around 50. In fact, in the month of February that just ended, he averaged 30 points per game, 7 rebounds, and again, the shooting splits nearly 50% from the field and from three, and his free throws up to around 7.5 a game. Those are incredible numbers, and not just offensively. You have to remember that he's probably our best defensive player as well. He really is developing into a two-way, top-tier kind of player. Now, what I wanted to get into today, besides just how awesome he's been, is the stupid and meaningless game that we always play where we compare players to other players for no reason. And I don't know why I really like doing this shit. And I've heard all kinds of comps for Jayson Tatum. So I just kind of wanted to look at each one on an individual basis and sort of give my thoughts on what I think. So some of the names that have been floated out for comparisons for Jayson Tatum are Kevin Durant, Carmelo Anthony, Kawhi Leonard, Paul Pierce, Kobe Bryant, Paul George, Tracy McGrady, and Rudy Gay. It's a long list, and I'm actually going to go through each one. So let's start with the one that's the easiest to dissect because it's the farthest from the truth, Kevin Durant. Look, Tatum is not Kevin Durant. I'm not sure where people get this crazy idea from. Kevin Durant, as much as he's a bit of a snake in the grass and kind of a weird dude that's unhappy all the time, he's an incredible basketball player. He's a generational talent, and there's not going to be another Kevin Durant. I mean, the guy is 7 feet tall, nearly. I mean, he's listed at 6'10", but he's probably closer to 6'11". He's got a crazy wingspan. And, he was just incredible right away. As a 19-year-old rookie, he was averaging 20 points a game, 4 rebounds, 2.5 steals, 2.5 assists, and a steal and a block. And then his second year in the league as a 20-year-old, up to 25 points per game. And then his third year, when everybody makes the leap, he averaged 30 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, 3 assists, 1.5 steals, and 1 block. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Look, Tatum is 21 years old right now, and in the month of February, he averaged those numbers. He averaged 30 points, 7.5 boards, 3 assists, a steal and a half, and a block. Like almost identical numbers, but I'm still not buying it. I mean, look, I don't think that Tatum is going to end this year shooting 50% from three. So as amazing as his month of February was, incredible to watch. I mean, he had some amazing performances. In particular, those 2 games against LA in the Clippers game, I mean, it was mind-blowing what he did. He went up against Kawhi Leonard on both ends. He outscored him, and then he shut him down defensively. He was the best player on the floor, which is incredible. And then he did the same thing in the Lakers game. We came up short in that game, but sharing the court with Anthony Davis and LeBron James, Jayson Tatum was unquestionably the best player on the court that night. So those are really important performances for a young player to gain his confidence. But again, Kevin Durant, as a 21-year-old, averaged those numbers over the entire course of a season. He played 82 games. He played literally every single game. And I'm just not ready to say that Tatum is ever going to reach those heights. Kevin Durant is his own special player. So let's cross him off the list. I think where people see the comparison is just the fact that, like, Kevin Durant and Tatum both seem to have this kind of length where it seems like they can get their shot off over anybody, and that defense doesn't really affect them when it comes to shooting the basketball. Now, that's still more true for Kevin Durant because he's just a bigger guy than Tatum. I mean, Tatum's a big guy, but he's 6'8". Kevin Durant, 6'10", 6'11". So, again, even though the comps are there, it's really not fair to Kevin Durant, who's just a better player. So let's take a look at another one. Well, coming out of the draft, Carmelo Anthony and Rudy Gay were the 2 names that got floated around a lot. It was like best case scenario is Carmelo Anthony and realistic scenario is Rudy Gay. Now, when I look back on that yesterday, I kind of laughed. I was like, Rudy fucking Gay? Like, he sucks. There's no way that anybody could have thought that Jayson Tatum was going to be Rudy Gay. But to be fair, I think I kind of underestimated how, Rudy Gay kind of had a nice career. So if you look at him, actually, his second year in the league, he was 21 years old. So same age as Tatum now. But his second year in the league, he averaged 20 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal and a half, and a block. I mean, those numbers are really similar to what Tatum is doing this year. Tatum's at, I think, 23 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, and about a steal and a half and a block. I guess what surprised me about Rudy Gay is that I never remember him being a good defensive player. And statistically, at least, his defensive numbers look all right. Now, that being said, defense is really a hard thing to measure with statistics. It really is. And, Jaylen Brown you can look at, because Jaylen Brown doesn't rack up a lot of steals or blocks, but he's a fantastic defender. And Rudy Gay looks like he was racking up some stats, but I don't ever remember him being a quality defender. Certainly not on the level of what Tatum is doing this year. So I guess I can see why they compared him to Rudy Gay, because as far as size goes, they do have a very similar frame. They're both 6'8". Rudy Gay is about 230 pounds now, which, Tatum's a lot smaller than that now, but he's young. He could easily grow into his frame. And they're both really nice shooters. But that being said as well, Rudy Gay was never the kind of three-point shooter that Tatum's going to be. I don't think. I think Tatum's got a special stroke from deep. And I just think that for this comparison, Tatum is just a better player than Rudy Gay. Already in his third year, I just think his career is going to have a higher trajectory. So let's cross Rudy Gay off the list. Now, Carmelo was probably the most popular comparison, and actually, this will probably haunt me for the rest of my life, but when we traded Markelle Fultz, who I was in love with before he forgot how to shoot, I was really upset, and I actually did not like Tatum that much coming out of the draft because I did feel like he was a Carmelo light. I felt like he was a ball stopper, an isolation scorer, that he wasn't going to fit in sort of like the team concept, and I also wasn't sold on him defensively because I hadn't really seen it at Duke. Now, a lot of credit has to go to Jayson for basically reinventing not only his offensive game to be much more in the flow of like a team setting, but also just his commitment to the defensive side of the ball. So with this comparison, I still don't think that Tatum is the type of scorer that Carmelo is, or was at least. I mean, to be honest, Carmelo is one of the best pure scorers the game of basketball has ever seen. I mean, he came in as a 19-year-old, averaged 21 points. By his third year, he was averaging 26 and a half. In his fourth year, he averaged 29. I mean, the guy just knows how to score. That being said, Carmelo is an awful defensive player. He was never a good defensive player. And what Tatum has done on that side of the ball already puts him in a whole different category. So with no disrespect to Carmelo Anthony, who really had a nice career, even though he's been much maligned for his lack of being able to win, or just the kind of basketball that he played where he just kind of caught the ball and stopped and really kind of ruined offenses or ruined players around him. He never averaged more than, he had 1 year where he averaged 4 assists, but he usually hovered around 3, which is where Jayson Tatum's at now, and he is going to need to improve in that area. But Tatum is just already a much better defender, probably a better rebounder, and I think he has the possibility of becoming a better passer as well. Now, will he ever be as good a scorer as Carmelo? I mean, we'll see. Carmelo got a lot of shots and was a really, really good mid-range scorer, but he was not a good three-point shooter, and Tatum is a good three-point shooter. So theoretically, Tatum could actually surpass Anthony as far as efficiency goes. I don't know if the numbers will ever get there because I think Tatum is just going to end up being surrounded by more talent and having to share the load a little bit more. But the Carmelo Anthony comparison, basically, Tatum's a better three-point shooter. He's probably going to be a better passer. He's certainly a better defender. Not as good from the mid-range yet, but better from three. So let's take a look at Kobe Bryant, another one that kind of gets mentioned sometimes, maybe just because, Tatum idolized Kobe and obviously trained him a few times and built a lot of his moves and skills around the kind of stuff that Kobe did. But to be fair, they're just different players. Kobe was a much smaller player, 6'6", than Tatum. Kobe was much, much more athletic than Tatum is, much more of a high flyer. But if you just look at the numbers, first of all, Kobe Bryant came into the league when he was 18 years old, so that kind of mixes things up a little bit. Tatum came in as a 19-year-old. So in his third year in the NBA, Kobe Bryant averaged 20 points, 4 assists, 5 rebounds, a steal and a half, and a block. So this is Tatum's third year, and Tatum's numbers are actually better. But if you look at age-wise, fourth year in the NBA, Bryant averaged 22.5 points, 5 assists, 6 rebounds, a steal and a half, and a block. So now you're looking at very, very similar numbers, probably better numbers than what Tatum is doing right now at the same age. But then you have to really look at the next year. There's a couple of jumps. Like we talked about Tatum, how he's made the leap in his third year. And I think it would be fair to say that Kobe kind of made the leap in his third year, but then he made another leap in his fifth year. As a 22-year-old, he averaged 28.5 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, nearly 2 steals, and a half a block. So that's a big, big jump. And I just don't think it's fair to expect that Tatum can make another leap when he's just made one. I mean, at this point, I think most Celtics fans would be happy if he could just try to kind of sustain the level he's at right now. And then, in year 7 or 8, Kobe made another leap where he started to average, 30 plus. And let's not forget of all the defensive awards that Kobe Bryant won as well. So, look, I love Jayson Tatum. I don't think the Kobe Bryant comparison is a very good one. I don't think that Tatum is going to be the shitty teammate that Kobe Bryant was for the first, 8-10 years of his career. I don't think he's going to be jacking up as many shots, alienating his teammates, and he's just a different player. Kobe was a shooting guard. Jayson is probably going to play his career at the power forward in today's smaller NBA. So let's get rid of Kobe. Paul George. Paul George is another name that gets thrown around. Very similar build, 6'8", 220. Paul's a little bit thicker than Tatum is, but it's a fair comparison. Now, this is an interesting one because I think most people would say right now Paul George is a better player. But, looking at the numbers statistically, I'm not convinced that Jayson Tatum isn't already better than Paul George. So just hear me out. In Paul George's third year in the NBA as a 22-year-old, he was averaging 17.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, and a half a block. He was a kind of a notoriously slow developer. It was probably his fourth year where he really bursted out on the scene. His fourth year with Indianapolis as a 23-year-old, he averaged 22 points a game, 2 steals, no blocks, 7 rebounds, and 3.5 assists. And those are really good numbers, but they're not that much better than what Tatum is doing right now as a 21-year-old. And let's look at Paul George's best year, which was last year for OKC. Averaged 28 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals. So if you were to say that that was Tatum's ceiling, I think that is definitely achievable. And also, as I said, I think Tatum has kind of reached higher plateaus earlier in his career than Paul George did. Now, obviously, there's a lot left to be determined, but I like this comparison, but I actually just think that Tatum is better. I think he's better now and is going to be better in the future. Now, a lot of that is because Paul George obviously has had a lot of injuries, and that's kind of held him back. He's only played in 37 games this year. He's missed quite a few because of injury. He obviously missed some in the previous years as well. If you look at win shares this year, which is interesting, Paul George has 3 win shares this year, and Jayson Tatum has 6. So, I mean, again, Tatum has played 55 games, and Paul George has played 37. So, obviously that's a huge part of win shares. It's just playing games. But that being said, if you were to project his production over 55 games, Tatum's win share would still be higher. So technically with win shares, Tatum's already better than Paul George. And I do think that a lot of this is because Tatum is just I think he's better at creating his shot than Paul George is. I think he's got more moves. He's got better footwork. He's just got more tools than Paul George has. That's what I think. Call me crazy. So let's get rid of the Paul George. Another name, his teammate gets thrown out, Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard was another notoriously slow developer, so it's a really hard comparison. And this is going to sound like sacrilege, but Tatum is way, way better player than Kawhi Leonard was at this same point in their development. I mean, no matter how you look at it. If you look at it for age, as a 21-year-old, Kawhi was averaging 12 points a game. As a 22-year-old, his third year in the league, which would be, this is the same for Tatum's third year in the league, he averaged 13 points per game. So, I mean, it wasn't until Kawhi Leonard's, fifth year in the league as a 24-year-old that he really became an elite player, where he was averaging 21 points per game, 2 steals, a block, 7 rebounds, and 2.5 assists. So the thing is that Kawhi was an incredible defender pretty much from day one. And it wasn't until year 5 where he really started to figure out his offensive game. In fact, in year 5, he shot 44% from 3 while shooting 4 threes a game. And he's never repeated that. That was by far the zenith of his three-point shooting. But that was really the year where he became a two-way dominant player. Now, it's interesting because, again, this is going to sound crazy. I think Tatum is better than Kawhi Leonard. Not now. I mean, clearly I'm not going to say anything too crazy. Kawhi Leonard is the best or the second best player in the NBA, especially when the playoffs roll around. We all saw what he did in the playoffs last year. But, I mean, I just mean from a career perspective, I would be surprised if by the end of their careers, if Jayson Tatum doesn't have a better career than Kawhi Leonard. I mean, Kawhi Leonard just started very slow. It wasn't until year 5. Now, if you judge it on championships, it's kind of unfair because Kawhi was on those really good San Antonio teams. I think really the big marker that you can make for Kawhi was winning that ring with Toronto was an incredible thing. He just went there and made them win. And that was amazing. And obviously Tatum is going to have some work cut out for him in his career if he wants to be remembered like that. That being said, I don't think the Clippers are going to win one with him. I just don't think it's going to happen. I'm not saying it can't happen. I just don't think it's going to happen. But we'll see. I think there's a strong possibility that when all said and done, that Tatum could have a better career than Kawhi Leonard. I think that the two-way impact on the game with Kawhi is a really fair comparison for Tatum, although they definitely are different. I mean, Kawhi is a much better defender. Tatum is a good defender, but he's got a lot of work to do if he ever wants to reach Kawhi's status as a defender. Tatum has more moves and seems like he's better at finding ways to score, but Leonard is just kind of a machine. He doesn't really seem to need moves. He just can beat you at his own pace and pull up with that mid-range jumper and score whenever he wants. And we've seen it time and time again, and he's so strong getting to the basket. So right now, obviously, Kawhi Leonard, much, much better player than Jayson Tatum. I'm just saying it's not out of the realm of possibility that Tatum might have a better career. Oh my God, I'm going to get killed. Okay, so I saved my favorite 2 comps for last. Comp 1 is one that Boston fans will probably be familiar with because it just makes sense from a Boston standpoint, and that's Paul Pierce. Paul Pierce, obviously much different body type than Jayson Tatum, much thicker, a bit shorter, just a much stronger player. One of the things that Paul Pierce was so incredible at was getting to the rim and getting fouled. So as a 21-year-old rookie, Pierce averaged 16.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, almost 2 steals and a block. And he was also shooting 4 free throws a game as a rookie. I think Tatum in his first year was like 2. Now, if you looked at Paul Pierce's third year in the league as a 23-year-old, he averaged 25 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, almost 2 steals, and a block. So if you look at it just as their third year, Pierce was a better player. He just was. I mean, he was a year older, as I said, but he was better. And if you look at Pierce's second year when he was 22, his numbers are very comparable to what Tatum is doing now as a 22-year-old. Well, he's going to be 22 very, very soon in his third year. Like I said, the biggest difference between Paul and Tatum is that Paul was just so good at getting to the line. So good. And we've been talking about this for a long time with Tatum. If he wants to be that superstar kind of player, he has to be able to get to the line better. And to be fair, over this amazing streak that he's had over the last couple of months, he has gotten to the line much better. I think, like I said, in the month of February, he got to the line 7.5 times a game. Those are superstar numbers. Right now in the season, he's averaging 4.5 free throw attempts a game, which is up from 3 last year. So there's a huge improvement, but it needs to keep going up. Like 4.5 is still low for a superstar kind of player. You really need to be at 6 to 8. I mean, James Harden shoots fucking 11 free throws a game. I mean, it's James Harden, but that's the biggest difference, that Tatum just needs to get stronger going to the hoop and drawing fouls. Other than that, I do think they have a lot of similarities. They both find ways to get their shots off. They both have excellent footwork. They're both good two-way players, although I don't feel like Paul Pierce got a lot of respect as a two-way player until Kevin Garnett came around, and that's fair because his effort on the defensive side of the ball definitely came and went. I think it was actually better in his first couple of years in the league when he was trying to prove himself, and then when he became like that 26-point scorer, as a 24, 25-year-old, he was averaging 26 points a game. I think the defensive part of the game kind of didn't matter as much to him. As a 28 and 29-year-old, again, he was averaging 25, 26 points a game, and the defensive numbers just aren't really there. But once 2008 rolled around and Kevin Garnett came around, then his defense, I think people got to see how good of a defensive player Paul Pierce really could be. So I actually like this comparison for Tatum. Again, they are different players. Tatum more of a finesse guy. Paul Pierce more of like a ram it down your throat in the lane kind of guy. But I do think that their careers could be really similar. I know Pierce just recently came out and said Jayson Tatum is going to be better than me. And yeah, that's a great thing to say, but we'll see. I mean, Pierce had a pretty amazing career, and yeah, we'll see. I mean, I guess I can't – if I say that Jayson Tatum could have a better career than Kawhi Leonard, who's won multiple rings, I guess I can't really say that he doesn't have a chance to be better than Paul Pierce, who only has one. So, yeah, let's go with what Pierce said and say that Jayson Tatum could be better. That being said, at this point in his career, Paul Pierce was a better player. He was older, but he was better. So let's look at the last comparison that I like, and that's Tracy McGrady. Tracy McGrady is an interesting one that came up recently from Bill Simmons, and I really liked it once he mentioned it. Tracy McGrady has almost the exact same body as Jayson Tatum does. They're both 6'8". They're both around 200, 210 pounds. I think McGrady's probably a better athlete. I do remember him flying through the air for blocks and dunks, and you don't really see that as much from Tatum. So definitely a point in McGrady's favor. McGrady was another weird one that kind of developed slowly. He was a good defensive player, and then all of a sudden, he just fucking exploded. So in his third year in the NBA, again, McGrady came in as an 18-year-old, so you have to do some gymnastics here. In his third year in the NBA as a 20-year-old, he averaged 15 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and 2 blocks, which are good numbers, especially defensively, but I mean, Tatum is beyond that in his third year. Now, if you were to do it by age, in his fourth year as a 21-year-old, the same age Jayson Tatum is right now, McGrady just fucking blew up. He averaged 27 points per game, a steal and a half, a block and a half, 7.5 rebounds, and 4.5 assists. So that's obviously light years beyond what Tatum is doing this year. I mean, not necessarily in the month of February, but again, the season is a lot longer than a month. McGrady did this over 77 games as a 21-year-old. He just blew up. And he basically kept that level of play up for the next, 7 years? 7 or 8 years. Basically, from 22 to 27, Tracy McGrady was fucking unbelievable. And then, of course, he had the bummer of a knee injury, and it just wrecked his career. I mean, by the time he was 28, he was pretty much washed, which is really unfortunate because McGrady did have a lot of the same hallmarks that Tatum has. The ability to get a shot off whenever he wants, kind of going into these indestructible modes of offensive firepower that he just could not be stopped. And also being a two-way player, being really good on both ends of the ball. So I actually really like the T-Mac comparison. That being said, T-Mac was just on another level. Like, Tatum has been great lately so far, don't get me wrong, but T-Mac was on a whole nother level. And, hopefully Tatum can get there. And I don't want to say that he can't get there. He could. And the one thing I think Tatum has going for him, and I hope I don't jinx him by saying this, but his game isn't predicated so much on athleticism, and I just don't see him being derailed by injuries the same way that Tracy McGrady was. So in the long term, full career, again, I think that Tatum is going to have a better career than Tracy McGrady. But is he going to be able to replicate that 5-year stretch that McGrady had from 22 to 27? I don't know. I mean, that was an absolute tear of a stretch from McGrady, and I would be surprised if Tatum was ever able to play at that high of a level for that sustained amount of time. But again, over the long term, 10, 15 years, I think Tatum has a great shot to end up having a better career. So that's all the comparisons. Again, with win shares, just to give you an idea, I think Kawhi Leonard's win shares are right about the same as what Jayson Tatum's are this year. So really impressive. Jaylen Brown win shares at 4.5. Jayson Tatum's at 6. So, I mean, Jaylen's been awesome this year too. But, the whole Jordan and Pippen kind of comparison, I do like it just in the sense that Boston now has a definitive hierarchy. Like, everybody knows now that Tatum is the guy. And nobody really knew that coming into this year. He hadn't shown it. Both Jaylen and Jayson kind of had shitty years last year. They both underachieved. They've both grown so much this year. Jaylen has been awesome, but Tatum has started to ascend into that superstar status. I mean, he's probably, the way he's playing right now, he's probably a top 15 guy in the NBA. And there's no way that anybody would have said that he was that when the year started. So now we have this hierarchy where Tatum is our superstar and Jaylen Brown is his wingman. And I think that actually is great because when people know their roles, I think it just helps the team play better. So that was the craziest, longest, God fucking help me, I'm so obsessed with the Celtics rant I've ever gone on. I'm obsessed with Jayson Tatum lately, with his shot making, his improved dribble, his impact on the ball, on the defensive side, his calm and his poise when he went up against Kawhi and just outplayed him, when he was playing LeBron and Anthony and just had no fear. I mean, these are incredible things to see from a 21-year-old guy who's going to be 22 tomorrow. Oh, happy birthday. Happy birthday, Jayson. Yeah, just awesome stuff. And you really start to feel like, the future is bright for Boston because really you cannot win in this league without a superstar. For every Detroit Piston team, there's a million others that just need at least one superstar to win. I mean, sometimes you even need 2 or 3. But, Boston didn't have one. And now we do. Maybe. Probably. Hopefully. So that's it for now. Another crazy Celtics rant for Rants, Ramblings, and Reviews. Tune in next time. I'm sure I'll have more hot takes about the Celtics. Cheers.